Hello everyone, and welcome back to STW Sports. I'm host Samuel Wright, and today I'm joined by Birmingham City fan Jordan Evans. And Jordan, a new championship season is arriving. It'll 6 days' time. The first game will be between Sheffield Wednesday and Southampton on Friday Night Football. It's very, very exciting, I must admit. Championship last season was very fun. We had a lot of surprise teams up there. We had the fairy tale story of Luton Town going up. It was an incredible season, to be honest, and some big names dropping down from the Premier League, some surprise teams coming up from League One. It's set for a really good championship season, arguably the most hyped one for a long time, and so many managerial changes as well. It's been crazy. When I was doing my research, didn't realise how many teams have changed their manager, but there's been a damn lot this summer, that's for sure. And Jordan, honestly, as a Birmingham City fan, are you excited for the new season for Birmingham and just in general as a championship fan?
Yeah, I'm excited for both, to be fair, Sam. Obviously, Birmingham City have finally just been took over by some new owners from America. So they've come in, and already you can see a difference with like signings, just like the ground getting fixed, and the championship, like you say, as a whole, is just going to be probably the best one we've ever had with the teams that we've got in. There's so much quality, so much big names in there, and like we were saying before, Sam, I was actually really struggling with this one where you kind of get an idea when you look at teams where they're going to finish, but you could have any one of them 24 finishing any of them places, and you wouldn't be surprised. I don't think a lot of people would be. But going on to the predictions, I think there's some unhappy fans there's gonna be some unhappy fans and some jubilant fans with my predictions. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's what me and Jordan are here to do. We are to bring you our championship predictions. We're going to go from 24th all the way to first, and it is one of the hardest leagues in the world to predict, let's face it, but we're going to give it our best shot today. So unfortunately, that Jordan said there's going to be a few unhappy fans, and that's going to be the case with anyone who's selected to be in the bottom three. Jordan, I'm going to let you go first. Who do you have in 24th place?
Sorry, Rotherham fans, but yeah, I've got you guys to go down next season. I think you did a fantastic job last season staying up. I think you've comfortably stayed up as well. A lot of tips to go down last season, but you defied the odds and stayed up pretty comfortably in the end. Looking at the signings, I think they've made about 2 or 3 signings since last looked, and the squad doesn't look as good as some of the others. And I think, like I say, Sam, there could have been about 7 or 8 teams I could have picked for 24th, but unfortunately, it's got to be Rotherham for me. Like I say, I finished 19th last season, and I think the teams above are just going to have a little bit too much, so I can see them going down. And apologies, Rotherham fans.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jordan. We've actually in agreement in our very first one here. I mean, I do like Rotherham. I'm very happy they broke the yo-yo cycle last year and they did stay up, but they actually did that once before as well. Then the following season they went down. I do like Rotherham. I think they're a good club. Again, it was fair play for them to staying up. And when I was working in League Two football a couple of seasons ago, their manager Matt Taylor was at Exeter. He got them promoted, and I'm a big fan of Matt Taylor. I think he is a good manager. And obviously losing Paul Warne as well was difficult last season, and getting Taylor in, they did well. But I just think this season it is going to catch up with them.
Yeah.
I think there are some really strong teams down there, and I think Rotherham. I think the thing they can do is make the New York Stadium a fortress. For me, that's the only way they can stay up next season, which is what they did last season in a way. But yeah, I'm agreeing with Jordan. I think they're just going to have there's a little bit too much quality in the teams above, and I do expect Rotherham to fall short this season. So I've also gone Rotherham in 24th. And who's your first team joining them in relegation?
Unfortunately, Neil Warnock's Huddersfield. Last season, obviously, they struggled massively until Neil Warnock come in, and he got some absolutely massive results. Obviously, especially a few good home results, but there was a good sort of period between March and April where they just consistently won, and that kept them up in the end. I know Neil Warnock, of course, is a great manager, but he's at an age now where I think if he starts getting a bit of stick from the fans and loses a few games before Christmas, I don't see him lasting the whole season, which, like I say, spells trouble for Huddersfield. And the fact they've only made 1 signing as well hasn't really helped anything. And again, there's too much quality in the other teams for me to say that they're not going to finish any higher. Obviously, if they stayed up, great, but it's going to take a bit of a miracle for them to stay up. They're going to need a few signings to bolster that squad. And like I say, it all depends on their managerial situation as well. But like I say, I can't see Neil Warnock lasting the whole season just because of the age he's at. And he probably just wouldn't want the pressure at his age if he's getting slated every single week. I know he can take it. But I think Huddersfield for 23rd for me. That's a quite a confident one, I'd probably say.
Yeah, I feel terrible for my 23rd place. I've actually gone with Plymouth Argyle, and this is a really bold one because I do think Plymouth, they fantastic in League One last season, won the league with 101 points. And Stephen Schumacher, fair play to him, the way they dropped out of the playoffs the year before on the last day, losing 5-0 to MK Dons, to then respond the way they did, which no one expected, including myself, to win the league the way they did. I do think it's good, but my big problem is they haven't been in the Championship for a very long time. I don't think Schumacher's got any experience at this level either. It's limited experience if he does. And I just think that Plymouth are a good team. I just think it's the away form that might let them down when newly promoted clubs come up. Like Wigan won League One the season before. I know they had difficult circumstances financially, but I just feel like with Plymouth, it could be a tough place to go, especially with how far away it is and stuff like that. But I just think Plymouth is going to catch up with them in the Championship. I think it's going to be a step too far for them. I hope I'm wrong. I do like Plymouth, and it's great to see them back in the Championship. But I unfortunately have put Plymouth down there.
Yeah, perfect. Well,
yeah.
Confirming that third and final relegation place, I've gone for Cardiff City, just because they've had some difficulties on and off the pitch for a little while now, and obviously they scraped relegation last year. I think obviously Reading got that points deduction. They could have potentially gone down. I think they probably would have gone down actually without their points deduction. And I can't see kind of any signings in there apart from Aaron Ramsey, but he's what, 33, 34, and he's probably out coming back. And it's more of a romance story. I think that signing. I don't think he'll play many games. I believe they've got a transfer embargo as well on them, but yeah, I can't see Cardiff staying up. I think they'll just go down it's going to be between them and obviously I won't give that away, but the 21st place, I think it will be between them two.
Yeah, so 22nd for me, Jordan. I've gone with Huddersfield Town. Same reasons as you, exactly the same reasons. I don't think Neil Warnock's going to last the whole season. I can see him sticking it out till maybe November or Christmas, but I just feel like if I know it was great that he came in last season, Warnock, and kept them up. It was a brilliant story, but I just feel like if they start this season badly, the fans will start getting on his back, and I do think Huddersfield will get someone in, and I just don't really think it'll work out. I think they were quite fortunate last season. I mean, they massively overachieved a couple of seasons ago, of course, getting into the playoff final. But I do think it's going to be a step too far for them this time, and I do think they will be relegated. I'm not sure who they'll replace Warnock with, but I just feel like once the novelty wears off with Warnock and maybe the football, they start to get a bit bored maybe and they start to get a few bad results. I do think Warnock will leave, and I do think, I'm expecting a new manager to come in, and by then it might be a bit difficult. So my relegated teams are Rotherham, Plymouth and Huddersfield, unfortunately. Sorry to any of them fans listening, but they're the three teams I'm having to go down from the Championship this season. And so John, who are you having to just survive?
Two out of the three, actually, we've got the same, haven't we, with that, mate? So again, apologies for any of the other fans. So this is between Cardiff and I've gone for QPR. QPR, the reason being is I think some managers are suited to certain clubs. I don't think Gareth Ainsworth is suited to QPR. I think the back end of last season, they was just a very poor, no offense to the fans, but they was a very poor team to watch. I remember watching them a few times and I thought they're destined for League One. They stayed up again by sort of the skin of the teeth in 20th. So for me, QPR, again, another manager I can't see lasting the full season. I think it's a little bit of a gamble in what he did in leaving Wycombe where they was and then coming to QPR where they was. I think it's a gamble that hasn't paid off, but they've made a few signings, so I do expect they'll have they're just about enough to stay up. But if there was another team I could have added to the third place in the relegation zone, it would have been QPR, between QPR and Cardiff. But 21st, I've gone for Queen's Park Rangers. So
I've gone for Cardiff in 21st. I agree with what you said about Cardiff earlier on, but I mean, the manager, Errol Bullitt, who's just come in, he's literally only ever managed in Turkey. He actually had a very good record at Fenerbahce, to be fair to him. He actually had a 64% win rate. So to be fair to him, that's not too bad, but I just think he's Turkish and he's always managed in Turkey. Coming to a new country, new league, I think it's going to be difficult for him. I don't think he'll last the season. That's my theory. And I do think Cardiff will bring someone in to keep them up. I think that it's going to be tight. I do think Cardiff and Huddersfield will be fighting to pretty much the end for that final spot. But I just think Cardiff are going to have a struggling season for me. They are a team I'm tipping to really be down there. But I just feel like they'll get in a manager towards the end and it'll get a bit of a bounce and it'll be enough for them to stay up. I think it's going to be a very close one down there. But yeah, I'm going with Cardiff. A lot of people tipping them to be relegated, but I think they'll just survive. And I agree with what you say about Aaron Ramsey. It's a nice story for him coming back, but if I'm being honest, Ramsey hasn't been a good player now for a long time. So I wouldn't really get my hopes up. I know it's good for Cardiff fans. Ramsey might inspire them. I think in a relegation battle, if Ramsey's really motivated, which I'm sure he will be at his hometown club, I'm sure he'll definitely put up a fight. But I just think that, yeah, Cardiff, they will stay up, but for me, it's not going to be pretty and it's going to be very narrow. I do hope that Errol Bullock does well. He's obviously a very surprising manager. He's come from out of nowhere, really, from Turkey, always managed there and always played there as well, from what I saw. So it's definitely a gamble, but I'm going to say that I'm not really too sure about it working out. I think it's a really weird appointment to start the season. And it's interesting how long he does last, because I think if he starts badly, I can see the fans turning against him pretty quickly, especially with him being someone who has no association with the club.
Yeah, definitely. They're not the most forgiving fans, are they, Cardiff, if they don't get off to a good start, mate, definitely. Just above them in 20th, I've gone for one of their League One promoted teams in Plymouth. I know you've had them to go down, Sam, but I just think they've got enough to stay up. Obviously, like you say, they comfortably won that league last season with 101 points. I think they've got a great manager. They've got a great set of fans down there in Plymouth as well. Like, I think, like you said about Rotherham, if they can turn their stadium, because it's like 20,000 plus, if they can get some sellout crowds in, week week out, the big teams like your Middlesbroughs, your Watfords and people like that, they'll turn them over. I think with the style of play that they've got, they'll definitely surprise a few teams next season, and I think they'll have just enough to stay up. And again, they've made 5 or 6 signings to build on the squad that they've already got last season. And I just think that they've got enough over the likes of Huddersfield, Cardiff in their squad to keep them out of trouble. And for them, that'll be a great achievement to stay up. Like you say, they haven't been in the league for, I think the last thing was about 10, 15 years ago. They've been in it for a while. So they'll be happy with the success of staying up. And I think with Plymouth, it's anything in them bottom 6 places, I've got them. But yeah, 20th, I've got them, and staying up, Plymouth fans.
Yeah, so my 20th place, right, I'm really sorry. This is going to shock a lot of people. I've gone for West Bromwich Albion. Now, this one does sound crazy. I rate Carlos Corberán. It's nothing against Carlos Corberán at all. I just think that West Brom's kind of yo-yo cycle that they're known for has kind of come to an end. And I don't think it's necessarily Corberán's fault, but they've not done anything in the transfer window. They had a shocking start under Steve Bruce last year when everyone thought they were going to do well. I don't think Corberán necessarily will get sacked, but he will if they're in 20th, to be fair. He'll definitely will if they're down there. But I think that it's not going to be Corberán's fault. I think the lack of transfer activity, for me, there's a lot of problems at West Brom right now. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like it's going to catch up with them. And I think they're going to have a real write-off season. I think one team I've got 2 or 3 teams to massively underperform, but one of them for me is West Brom. And it's nothing against Corberán. I just think with the circumstances at West Brom and maybe the lack of transfers and activity, I know there's time for them to change that, but I just think it's going to catch up with them. And I think West Brom are going to have a really, really poor season. It might be a bit like QPR where they start quite well, but then they just completely fall down. And I think it's going to be one of them seasons. Corberán might even leave to a bigger job, obviously, if he starts well as well. But I just think Albion, for me, I'm just tipping to have a bad season. There's something about Albion that doesn't look right now. And I'm going to say they're going to finish all the way down in 20th.
That's a great prediction, to be fair. Like you said, there's going to be a few shockers, isn't there? And this is my first one. I've gone for Blackburn. I've gone for Blackburn for a couple of reasons. I think they tailed off a little bit towards the end of the season. They had a great start. The last 2 seasons, they've had a great start. They've been cemented in even the top 4 places. And then if something happens after Christmas, or all the time after Christmas, New Year, they dip in form a little bit. And they missed out on the playoffs, obviously, just by a point or 2 and finishing in 7th place. But they've lost Brereton Diaz, Bradley Dack, and again, they've only made a few signings in their leagues. But I see other teams with stronger squads over Blackburn, and I don't see them having if they don't get off to a great start, I can see John Dale Thomason potentially getting the sack and bringing somebody else in, because he's had a good couple of seasons now, and they're obviously, target is the playoffs. But if they don't get a good start to the season, I can see them having a little bit of a nothing season and potentially worrying a little bit down the bottom as opposed to the top. But That's my first bold prediction. Obviously, if you look at Huddersfield the season before, like you said, Sam, they was in the playoffs the season before. They struggled over that summer, and then they just stayed up. I can see Blackburn but being that team and the team above them, which again I won't give away, but I can see the other team doing it as well. But yeah, 19th place, Sam, Blackburn Rovers.
That's a bold prediction. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Thomason last season. He came in and did a good job. I think he kind of did a lot of what Mowbray was doing the season before, did quite well. But yeah, I do agree with you, though, in a sense that Blackburn are certainly capable of dropping down the table. I definitely agree with that. So my 19th place is Queen's Park Rangers. I've had them to be down there. They had I think it was 4 wins in their last 30 games last season. I think Michael Beale leaving at the time he did was a disaster, to be honest. And I think that they started really well under Michael Beale. I think they were actually top at one point not long before he left. And he obviously took the job at Glasgow Rangers. And from then it really fell down. And I completely agree with you on Gareth Ainsworth. I don't think he's the right fit for the club. I think that Ainsworth obviously was at Wycombe for 10 years, I think it was. So many years at Wycombe. And what I'd love is for Ainsworth to go back to Wycombe. Not like I'm wishing their manager gets sacked, the current one, but I just love Ainsworth because I think that's kind of club's made for him. I don't think Ainsworth's going to last long. I think he might be the first one to get sacked, to be honest. If I'm predicting someone to get sacked first, it's probably going to be either him or someone I'll mention a little bit later who I'm also tipping to have a bad season. But yeah, I think QPR will bring someone in and steady the ship, and I think they'll do enough to survive. But I don't think it's going to be a good season again, really. I think QPR, who looked like they could be getting promoted a couple of seasons ago when they were doing so well under Mark Warburton, that kind of fell off. And then that's been the story of QPR the last few years. And now they're looking more like to get relegated than they are promoted. So it's a bit of a shame, but I do think that QPR, they will stay up, but I don't think it'll be pretty. And I certainly don't think Gareth Ainsworth's going to last long, judging on how they ended last season.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you there, Sam. It's there was tips. I think there was tips. It was last season to actually go up. I remember they beat Man United in pre-season. I think it was last year, and they've fell off quite dramatically. 18th, another bold prediction. Actually, I've gone for Cov. I've gone for Coventry City. Again, it's one of them where Mark Robins is an absolutely fantastic manager, but the playoffs does take a lot out of teams, and I think with Cov, they're a fantastic playing team. Very unfortunate not to go up last season in the end because they did it for them at the right time. Obviously, Luton just shaded them on the day. I don't think you'd have argued either way. And losing on a penalty shootout can be devastating to teams. I haven't really got too many reasons for Coventry finishing where they are, other than the fact of I just got a feeling that they're going to slip off a little bit. And looking at the other teams above, I can see them having a better season, but I've got full faith in that Mark Robins. Obviously, I'm a big fan of him. I wanted him at the Blues before we've got John Houston's in because he plays a great style of football. He's forward thinking, and the one of the biggest things is they've lost Girikas as well. And with Coventry, if you watch Coventry, they're fantastic at their build-up play, but over the years they've missed a striker. They finally got that striker. Now they've just had to sell him. It's if they replace his goals. If they replace his goals, they'll be back up in the top 6. But right now, for the signings they've made, I can't see them getting above mid-table. So, yeah, I've gone for Cov in 18th.
That is a bold prediction, John. That one surprised me, but fair enough. No, it does happen. Teams do get the playoffs, then the next season they fall off. It's not an uncommon thing. We saw with Barnsley, they got relegated the following season. We saw with Huddersfield last season as well. So it does happen, no doubt. But I've got Coventry in a much higher position, which I'll let you know later. 18th for me, Sheffield Wednesday. Again, really happy for Sheffield Wednesday, an amazing promotion. The way they came up as well was incredible, to be fair, turning that game round against Peterborough, against all the odds, winning the playoff final as well, of course, against Barnsley. I just think with Wednesday, getting rid of Darren Moore the way that they did was really, really unfair. I think that's the second time in his career Moore's been very harshly sacked because West Brom was kind of bad as well. I do think Xisco's an all right manager. Like, obviously, he went to Watford, and I think he was very harshly sacked at Watford, as most managers are. But he was definitely one of the biggest hot because he was doing quite well with them in the Premier League. I think they were sitting mid-table when he got sacked. But I look at his last 2 jobs, and he hasn't done well in either Cyprus or Spain. He's pretty much underwhelmed there in lower divisions. So I do think Xisco will do enough to keep them up if it's him who stays the whole season, but I don't think it's going to be convincing for Sheffield Wednesday. I think it's going to be a little bit of a relegation battle in their first season back up, but I do think they'll stay up, mainly because they've got Hillsborough, which I think they'll make a tough place to go, and their record at Hillsborough in the last few years has been exceptional as well since they got relegated. And I just think they've got just about enough quality for me to stay up, but I'm not expecting a great season from them, but I think they'll do enough to stay up.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that, mate. 17th, I've gone in for this team. Actually, I've seen over like Facebook and social media that they're tipped. A lot of people's tipped to do well, which I've had a little look into. I can't see why, but again, anyone could finish anywhere. It's Hull City, and a few people have been tipping them to finish in sort of the top 8. Did well last season, obviously finishing sort of 15th, 17th. So they finished comfortably in mid-table. Liam Rosenior looks like a decent manager as well. Looks like he's got them playing some good football. But you know, they just come back up from League One. They'll be happy to stay up, and I think they could potentially push on. But they've made a few signings, but there's nobody where I've looked and thought, yeah, they can be in the top 6. So I think they'll be all right. I think they'll be just under sort of mid-table. But again, it could be a potential dark horse, but I can't see anything in there really to why everybody else is putting them in sort of top 6, top 7 of the league. But yeah, 17th, I've gone for Hull.
Well, Joe, we're at an agreement. We're at a full agreement for the second time in the predictions. I agree. I think, to be fair to Liam Rosenior, he did quite well coming in last season. I think it's a weird one with Hull, obviously. They've got promoted from League One in the 2021, wasn't it? And they won the league that year. And I think a lot of people were tipping them to do really, really well, I think, the following season. I think a couple of people had them to do back-to-back promotions, but they've kind of stagnated in mid-table to relegation. And I do think Rosenior is all right. He's very inexperienced, though. He's only managed about 30 games in his career. But to be fair, he came in quite early last season, didn't he? And he did a pretty good job, like a solid enough job. So I'm expecting the same again from Hull, to be honest. I don't think they're going to be up there. I don't think they'll be in the relegation battle either. I think they'll have a solid enough season and do all right. I think they've got a good championship team. But no, I don't think they're ever going to be good enough to push on. I think Rosenior is a good manager for now, but you never know. There is surprise teams every year, but I just don't really see a world in where Hull go for the playoffs. I think 17th is probably about right, around mid-table, not in any relegation trouble or not really in any, not going to push on either.
Absolutely. Second team from League One, coming up from League One, I've gone for Sheffield Wednesday, so just a couple of places from where you put them, Sam. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the sacking of Darren Moore. He must be one of the unluckiest managers in football, because the form he showed at West Brom when there was dead and buried, he pulled some results out of the bag, got obviously sacked from them. And then obviously I know it was his second season to try and get Sheffield Wednesday back into the Championship, but he did it in the most dramatic of styles, and the emotions at that fans. And you could see after, I don't know if you've seen some of the clips after when he was in the changing room, them players absolutely adored him and they all fought for Darren Moore. And I feel really sorry for him, the fact that he hasn't had a crack at the Championship, because I think he's, you know, maybe not like a top 6 manager, but he's definitely like a manager that can get you a job done in the Championship. But the poor bloke hasn't had a crack at it, so we don't know. He could have gone and won the league with them, and obviously they brought in Isco from Watford. Big gamble, because wherever they're seeing the style of play, what Darren Moore's playing to Isco, they want to transition it to a bit more Spanish tiki-taki football, which a lot of teams are doing now. He's the only reason I can think that he's been sacked, but I think it's one of the harshest sackings ever in sort of a Championship League One. And like you say, their stadium's going to be a fortress next season, Hillsborough. It's very loud, obviously, when they're full power, they can fit, 30,000 in, and that'll play dividends at their home games as well. And again, that's another team that I could potentially see him doing a little bit above where I've put them, in terms of if they get it right with Isco, they don't want to turn into like another Watford though and get rid of him if he's not getting the results, because he's got a big job. Obviously, like I say, Darren Moore's done a fantastic job. They've got a good set of players. Barry Bannon has been in League One for a couple of seasons. He's not League One quality. He's above that. He's fantastic. They've got some great signings in there, Windass. They got some good players in there, and I think they will turn over a few of the big boys. And if they finished in the top 6, Sam, I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest with you. I think, get it right with Isco. It's going to take time to transition into the style of play, obviously. I know he's had the pre-season, but it's going to take time and potentially could be dark horses for the top 6. But for now, I'm going to put them in 16th because I think there's some better teams than them at the minute.
Yeah, 16th for me, I've gone with Bristol City. Again, I think Bristol City are a good club, Championship, really big club as well. I think their stadium's really good, but they just don't seem to kick on Bristol City, and they haven't really done enough to show me they're going to do so again. I do like Bristol City, but I'm amazed that Nigel Pearson's still there. Yeah. I mean, I've been amazed for a long, long time, but he's been there now since about March 2021. He's been there about 2.5 years, and I do think Pearson's a solid pair of hands at Bristol City, but with Pearson, it either is that he seems to do a brilliant job or not a very good one. And I don't think he's done much at all at Bristol City to warrant keeping his job for this long. And I do think that he's another one I can see maybe being the first to get sacked early in the season if they want to progress. But I do think Bristol City, it'll be another one of them seasons. I think 16th place, one of them, a season where they do all right, but nothing special again, to be honest. I want to see Bristol City do well and get in the promotion places, to be honest. I do like them as a club, but I'm going to go 16th. I'm not really expecting much from them this season.
You'd be surprised then where I put them. They're another one where I've gone a bit rogue with them. 15th, I've gone for a team that's just probably been in the Championship since the Championship started. I've gone for Preston. I couldn't think of nowhere else to put them. Don't think they've done much special in the transfer window. They've got a decent manager, obviously, in Ryan Lowe, but obviously they're forming. Last season was pretty decent. They picked up some good results and played some decent football, but I don't think they're in any danger of going down. I don't think they're going any threat to any of the top 2-3 teams to go up. Again, obviously, we're only at the end of July, so they've still got time to sort of make some more signings, but they just seemed happy to be in the Championship. I think I said exactly the same last year when I did their prediction. They just seem happy to be in the Championship. I don't think they're in any like urgency to get up to the top flight. So for that reason, I've gone for them to be in that kind of pile where, sort of from 12th down to 18th, any of them 6 teams can finish. They've all got like a little mini league, and I think Preston could finish anywhere between 12th and 15th. But yeah, I've had to put them somewhere, so I've put them 15th.
Well, my 15th place is a shock. It's Norwich City. Now, a lot of people might be, saying, oh, it's Norwich. How can you put them? They finished 13th last season. They had a really poor season. There's a few factors, really. I think this Norwich cycle's come to an end now. To be fair to Norwich, they've recruited well. I'll give them that. I can't fault their recruitment. But I just think Norwich are going to have a bad season. I don't rate the manager. David Wagner did an amazing job at Huddersfield back in 2017. But since then, you look at his record everywhere he's been, and he's really not been the same manager. I just think that, for me, I don't think Wagner's going to last long, and I just see them making an appointment that might not be the best, to be honest. And I just feel like Norwich's yo-yo cycle, a bit like Fulham, it's kind of come to an end now. I do think Norwich are going to be in the Championship for a few seasons, and I just see them having a bad season for some reason. I don't know why, but I just think Norwich, they've sold Pukki, been their main man for so many years now. I don't think Aarons is going to stay. I know he's been there a while now, Max Aarons, but I do think he'll move on as well. I just think with Norwich, they've recruited well, but I still think the players they've signed are quite old. A lot of the players they've signed as well. So I just think Norwich are going to have a poor mid-table season, if I'm being honest. I don't think Wagner's going to last too long, and I can just see it being an underwhelming one from Norwich's point of view.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, mate. It's they're one of them teams that you don't want in the Prem because you just know they're just going to not do anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're in 14th, aren't we? So 14th, I've gone quite couple of places again above yourself. Back the Baggies again. I always see the Baggies turning into a bit like what we did, Birmingham City did. We was always a bit of a yo-yo team. We won the cup, come down, and then obviously we got the worst owners we could possibly get. And I see the same with Baggies. And obviously they've got a fantastic manager, but how long is he going to stay around? And like you say, them owners aren't forgiven. If he loses a few games in the first 10 games, they'll get rid of him. And I think he's obviously he deserves better, to be fair, in terms of his signings. They've signed one player. They've lost a lot of players and they've signed one player. So for that reason, I don't see them being... I spoke to one of the lads actually before, and he said they potentially could go down. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, because it took us 7-8 years to get out the mess that we're in now. that we're out of now finally because of all the stuff that's going off the pitch. Baggies have been a good team, like you say, Sam, they're a yo-yo club. They've been up and down that Premier League and Championship for 15, 20 years. And I think now that they're sort of stabilising the Championship, they don't look like they've got the finances to go out and compete with the likes of Middlesbrough, Leicester, to go and get them top 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. And they don't look interested. I mean, I know it's still only early. We're in 30th, 29th of July. So we've got 4 weeks left or so of the transfer market. But are they really going to go out and sign 4, 5, 6 players to get them into that top 6? Probably not, because by the looks of it, their finances are all over the place. They want their owners out. And I think it's going to be a real struggle for them this season. And it will be until probably the owners get rid of their owners. So for that reason, I've got the Baggies 14th.
Yeah, you've gone a little bit higher than me, 6 places higher. But yeah, again, we're both in agreement West Brom won't have the best season. But in 14th place, Jordan, I've gone with your team, Birmingham City. I think that might be a little bit low for some people. I agree. Birmingham have had a very, very promising summer. And I think that Birmingham are a club who I think are capable of shooting up the table. But I just feel like for this season, it's still going to be a bit of a transition. And I feel like that you'll have your moments when you look really, really good. And I think there'll be a lot more promising signs. And I can see Birmingham starting quite well. I think you guys might be in and around it around about Christmas, but I do think there might be. I think John Hughes is definitely going to be here to stay as well. I think he'll do a solid enough job. I think 14th's a bit of progress. I think that'd be your highest finish for quite a long time, I imagine, as well.
Yeah.
So I do think that it's going to be a slow burner, but I do think this season's the transition. The next season was in the following season. I think if things are still going the way they are, that might be the season you kick on. I might be wrong, and you might have a season where you compete for the playoffs this year. I could be completely wrong, but I just think for now it's going to be a bit of a transition. So I see that a 14th place finish for me.
Take that all day, to be honest, mate. I really will. So moving on to number 13. So I've gone for a team that's been so unlucky. They always fall at the final hurdle in terms of the playoffs. Is Gary Wright's Millwall. I think that they was very unlucky there was in the playoff shouts up until April, till the end of the season, really. And obviously they tailed off and finished off in 8th in the end. But I think I can't see them fighting again. They've made a few signings. Obviously, Gary Wright's a fantastic manager, but I just don't think he's got what it takes to put them in that final hurdle. Obviously, they always have a strong start to the season. Their squad's quite thin as well, obviously. So, after sort of Christmas, January, February, they always tail off. And I think they'll do it a little bit sooner this time because of the quality that's above them. Your Leeds, your Middlesbroughs and everyone that's above them. I think they've got more than Millwall have. So, yeah, for that reason, I've gone with Millwall in their familiar place of 13th. So they usually get back 13th as well. So, yeah, gone for mid-table for Millwall.
Yeah, I've got Millwall a lot higher than that. You're going to be surprised at my prediction. But 13th for me, Preston North End. You mentioned earlier, Jordan, about them always being in mid-table. I see that being the same again. I remember, was it last season when they had about 5-0 draws to start the season or something? Yeah. And again, I do think Ryan Lowe is a good manager. I think the job he did at Bury, especially in the circumstances, was incredible. I just think that with Preston, I don't think they've really got the finances to kick on. I think it seems to be a case of they're very much that mid-table championship team, and they literally are the team who just don't seem to move. It's they're always somewhere between about 10th and about 15th. I think there was one season where they were pushing quite well, but I do like Preston. I think they're a good club, and I think that I'd love to see them do well. But I'm just going to go 13th. I think that's kind of a safe bet to have. I think Ryan Lowe's a really safe pair of hands. I do think he'll continue as manager there, but I just think I can't really see them making that step up. And with how strong it's going to be in the top places this year, I think 13th's about right.
Yeah, no, absolutely, right. They just always stay. If you look the word championship, Preston comes straight up to it as well, don't they? So, yeah, another season for them. Mid-table, I've got Watford. I've gone for Watford this time because, a bit like Norwich, I think this will be the season that they kind of tail off a little bit. The way that they run their club in terms of managers, that is, the players they bring in is fantastic, but the way they run it in terms of managers is ridiculous. And, literally no one's safe. If they lose one game, they could be gone. I know they've got a good manager in Vladimir Ismail. Didn't do too well at, obviously, West Brom. Couldn't get his style on. But what he did at Barnsley, was fantastic getting them into the playoffs. And obviously look at what happened to them when he left them. So I think they have got a good manager in Ismail, but I just can't see them fighting for like top two this time. Obviously, they've made a few signings in there. I've sold a few players in Pedro, and I think, I think they'll between 12th to 10th. I think they'll finish this season. Can't see them being any higher, mate.
Yeah, so for me, from 12th place upwards, for me, any of these teams can go up, in my opinion. So I'm a little bit like, in 12th place, though, at the bottom of that pile, I've gone for Stoke City. Now, this will be Stoke's highest ever finish, I believe, in the Championship since they got relegated, from the Premier League in 2018. They finished 16th last season, but to be fair, they made a managerial change right at the start of the season. For me personally, they probably should have got rid of O'Neill at the start of last season. And then, because I think keeping him for about 3 or 4 games is really pointless because he was sacked very early, wasn't he? And then I am a big fan of Alex Neil. I think he's a very good manager, especially in League One. I think in the Championship, though, he's always, I know he got Norwich promoted once, but he's always a mid-table sort of manager in the Championship. I do like Neil. I think he's a good manager, but I just feel like, I feel like a mid-table finish. 12th wouldn't be bad. I do think they'll be fighting for the playoffs a little bit at the start of the season. But I'm just going to say Stoke will finish mid-table 12th. It'll be higher than they have done, so it'll be a bit of progress, but still not what the Stoke fans want, obviously. But I do think that they'll be a bit better this season.
A little bit of I think this is a little bit lower than a lot of people have got these, but I've gone for Leeds in 10th.
It's not 11. It's not 11 now, or
11. Oh, sorry, mate. Yeah, so
that's all right.
Obviously now we know 10th as well. But yeah, 11th
okay.
gone for Norwich. It's similar reasons to you, Sam. Obviously, like I say, Pookie, I think, saved them a lot. In terms of the Championship, he was just a natural banger into front of goal, 25 goals plus the season. And they've replaced him with, I think, Ashley Barnes from Burnley. And obviously, he's a great Championship striker, but is he going to go and get the goals that Pookie's get? Probably not. He's a great, he's an old-fashioned centre forward. Obviously, he's great at holding the ball up, and but I don't think he suits their style of play. Norwich like to play on the floor, but he's better in the air, better throwing his elbows around as well. But yeah, I can't see Norwich finishing top 6 again. And I don't want, no disrespect to Norwich, I don't want them to, because they come up and they do nothing every time they come to the Premier League. You're guaranteed a few points. They got a shock result once against Man City. I think they won 3-2. Apart from that, you can't ever say what they've ever done in the Premier League. They come up for one season, they get their money, then they come back down and get their money. And I think the owners are happy doing that. They have got a great set of fans down there. But like you say, David Wagner, for me, doesn't really scream they're going to win the league. I think, few games in there, I don't think he's job safe sort of thing. But they've had a few managers. Dean Smith obviously was in last year as well. They didn't sort of suit him, which is surprising because Dean Smith, I think, is a very good manager. But yeah, I think we've come to the. I think they'll be happy with that as well. Good finish in 11th. But yeah, I don't think they're any higher than that, mate.
Yeah, that's fair. 11th place for me, I've gone Blackburn Rovers. I do think Blackburn, obviously, you had them to finish a lot lower than I did. I think Blackburn will do quite well still. I do rate Thomason. I think he's a good manager. I just think that I just don't think they'll do as well as last season. I think they'll do all right. I think they'll be knocking on the door of the playoffs, but I think ultimately they'll fall short at the end. I think they've lost some key players as well. Brereton Diaz has gone. I think Dak's gone as well. They've lost some really important players, Blackburn, so that's my reason I'm having them to drop off. I do think Thomason's good. I think that he did a good job last season coming in, but I just don't think he's quite going to get them to that next level. I think 11th place, I think a little bit of a downgrade, but I think it'll still be an all right season for Blackburn. I think they'll be trying to push, but I think there's just teams above them with a bit more quality.
Yeah, definitely. And I think everyone can guess who I said for 10th. But yeah, I've gone for Leeds, and I know that obviously a lot of people will have them to go straight back up, top 6, and a lot of Leeds fans won't be happy with me saying they won't do that. But I can't see them going up. I think they've had a bit of turmoil. We've just appointed obviously Farkham in the manager, but quite late into pre-season, so I think they're going to get off to a bit of a slow start. Obviously, you've got still got absolute quality through that ranks. In Bamford will be good in the Championship, I think. I think they've only made one signing in Ampadu from Chelsea and nothing else. They've lost quite a few key players. Ganato, they've lost quite a few key players, and I just think that look how long when they come back down, I'm talking early 2000s, look how long it took them to get back up then because they didn't invest wisely. I think they're doing that same kind of thing now. And if they don't get a few players in, they're not going to be in that top six. I think they'll get off to a slow start, maybe sign a few players in January and have a stronger stronger finish. So, yeah, for that reason, Sam, I've gone for Leeds to finish in 10th place for next season.
Yeah, very bold prediction. I see where you're coming from. I'll explain more when I get to my place in Leeds as well, but I definitely see where you're coming from there. I think that's a fair one. 10th place for me, I've gone Sunderland. Now, Sunderland fans might not be too happy with this. You're in the playoffs last year, but I think Sunderland fans do need to understand that was a massive overachievement. Like, no one said they'd be there. And to be fair to Tony Mowbray, I questioned him a lot when he was Blackburn manager about the direction he was taking the club, but he did fantastic at Sunderland last year. And I think the swap deal of obviously Neil went to Stoke from Sunderland and he, after getting them promoted from League One, a lot of eyebrows are raised when they brought in Mowbray. Did a fantastic job. So I do give him a lot of credit there. But I just think this season it's a better quality of Championship, with all due respect to Sunderland. I think that there is going to be teams, and I think they lost Ellis Sims as well. I think he's back at Everton now, isn't he? I believe, or he's left to go elsewhere. Yeah. I just think with Sunderland, it's going to be a bridge too far this year. And I think that they'll do well. They'll be in the top off. I think that's still a very respectable finish. But I just don't think the teams above them for me are just going to have a bit more quality. But I think there will be a bit of a drop off, but they'll still have a fine season though.
Brilliant. I've had Stoke in 9th. So I think Stoke obviously was a stabilised Premier League for many years, obviously, and they've come down, they've really struggled. They've chucked loads of money at it. They've gone through a lot of managers. But I think they've finally got a little bit of stability, and you could see that last season. And they've made a few good signings. I like Alex McNeil in as a manager. I think he's a good manager. Obviously, you got Sunderland up from League One. You've done all right in Preston as well. But I can see them having a little bit of maybe a push for the playoffs, maybe not get into the playoffs, but they've made a few good signings. They've made 8 signings so far, so they're really investing in that squad. They're making it bigger, and you know what Stoke can be like at a home ground. Obviously, when it's at full pelt, obviously that can get you an extra 5 to 8 points a season just from getting that little bit of being the 12th man of the fans as well. So yeah, I've gone for Stoke in 9th and a potential playoff push for them as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did go into there. So they're my official dark. I know I said Hull was, but they're my dark horses for this season.
Yes, a really fair one, to be fair, with Stoke. I think that's a good shout. I think, again, Stoke fans will take a little bit of a playoff push as well with how poor it's really been since they got relegated. And I'm a fan of Neil too. I agree with that. I just think Stoke a few places below. My 9th place is a bit of a shock. I've gone with Southampton. I think that a lot of people are assuming Southampton are going to do really well, and I think that's fair enough. I do think Russell Martin's a strange one. I do think he's a decent manager, but he doesn't really have a lot to show for it from his time at Swansea. It's like you look at his finishes compared to where they finished before he came in, and you'd assume he did a pretty bad job, but that wasn't the case. I think he did quite well. Swansea one week could look like Barcelona, the next week they could look like, Oldham Athletic. It was like, it was one of, no offense to Oldham, that is, but yeah, it's like, I just think Southampton have got a very young team. What they have done is they have kept hold of quite a lot of their players, from what I know, and they are bringing a few in as well. I just think with Southampton, though, I just think they're going to go through a bit of a transition, and I think they'll have really promising moments, but I don't think it'll be enough to get into that playoffs. And plus, as well, as I keep saying, it's going to be a very, very difficult championship this year. So for me, I think Southampton will be one of the teams who do fall a bit short, and I think, it won't be a first-time bounce back for them.
No, that's great reasons, to be fair. So I was actually thinking of putting them a little bit lower than I have done, but then I run out of spaces, so I had to. I could have put them between 3rd and 9th. This is so tough. But in 8th place, I've gone for this is probably the biggest shock. I've actually gone for Ipswich. They was absolutely burying teams. Now I know obviously the quality between League One and Championship is a little bit more, but they was absolutely burying teams last season, and their attacking play was absolutely fantastic. They've been waiting for years to come back into this Championship, and I think they'll give it a right good go. Obviously, they've made some signings in it. I think 4 or 5 signings as well. Portman Road again is a great stadium, so obviously fans do take a. But I've said it a few times, but it really does help obviously when the fans are in. But Ipswich will have a big buzz, and of course they've got the rivalry with Norwich, so they'll be wanting to finish above them as well. And I think they're going to give it a right good go. And I think they're going to be like a team where they may not have like a Sunderland, kind of what they did last season. They're just going to go about their business quietly. They'll put away some teams, and I think that towards the end of the season, they'll start to get into that top half of the table. But yeah, I think Ipswich are in for a good season this season, to be fair.
That's a really good shout. I've got Ipswich even higher, so you'll have to wait and see where I've got them. And I agree with the Sunderland statement, but I've got them even higher. 8th place for me, I've gone for Middlesbrough. Now, I have a reason for this. Middlesbrough last season, fantastic. My reasoning is, I think with the name of Michael Carrick, there'll be a Premier League club struggling and they'll come and poach him mid-season. I can see a Sheffield United or I don't know, a Fulham, who's Marco Silva left, really struggling and just taking a chance on Carrick. And I think that'll really disrupt Middlesbrough's rhythm. I do think if they keep hold of Carrick the whole season, they could well get playoffs. Not saying they definitely will, but they've got a very good chance. But I just think I can see around January, February, a Sheffield United or a Fulham really struggling, and then they come calling for Michael Carrick from the Championship. And that, for me, will disrupt Middlesbrough's rhythm, and they'll drop out the playoffs and finish 8th.
That's an absolute great shout, to be fair. I didn't think of it like that, because obviously where I've got them, you'll see why. But yeah, that's actually a great shout, to be fair, because he's obviously a young, good manager. So yeah, great shout. So in 7th and just missing out, and again, this is quite a bit of a shocker, is Bristol City. I think I can see Nigel Pearson getting it together this season. If he stays, obviously, I think we said every year he's been here that he probably won't last the season, but he looks like he's got his team settled, and you've seen what he's done at Leicester and, you know, other teams as well, where he's a great manager. And for years now, again, they're turning into a little bit of a Bristol. Sorry, they're turning into a bit of a Preston, where they're going around that middle of the table. And I think this year they're going to shock a few teams. I think they've got a good style of play. I think that they're going to grind results out, and I can see them just missing out on the playoffs. So yeah, for that reason, I've gone 7th for Bristol.
My 7th place is Watford, and I do think that this is a bit of a strange one, because I do like Valérien Ismaël. Did an absolutely brilliant job when he was at Barnsley. Not so good at West Brom. I don't know if he's going to last the season, if I'm being completely honest. He probably won't. But I just think Watford are going to do a little bit better this season. I think they'll do well. I think they've got some good players. I think they've still got quite a few of their Premier League players as well. Not maybe loads of them, but they've certainly got enough. And I think they'll bring in a few additions in January. I think Watford will push for that top 6, but I do think they'll narrowly miss out, for the main reason that if they do change their manager, obviously they change their manager a lot, though, so it's difficult to really judge this with Watford. But I think they'll do a little bit better, but I don't quite think it'll be enough players. I think 7th, and I think they'll narrowly miss out the 6th place.
Yeah, that's fair, Sam. That's fair. In 6th, we've got the same team as finished there last season, Sunderland. They've made a good few signings. They've signed Bellingham from us. They've signed Bradley Dack from Blackburn, which I think is a great signing. Obviously, he's worked under Tony Mowbray under Blackburn. And I think that they're a good team. Obviously, like you say, no one expected them to be there last season. But them youngsters are going to they've got experience. That team, some of them youngsters have been together for a few seasons now. And you've seen teams do the step from League One to Championship to Premiership, like Sheffield United, for example, Luton now, and then make that step together. And I think Sunderland have had that much experience of playoffs over the last few years. They're going to be dying to go back in there. And this time I'll consider them actually get into the final of the playoffs as well. But they've got a great mix of squad, and like in terms of youngsters, they've got a lot of youngsters, but now they're getting some experienced heads. So I think that's where they fell short in the playoffs last season, is because their team was so young. They didn't have like an experienced player in there. So yeah, I'm going Sunderland 6th, mate.
Okay, 6th place for me. I've finally gone for them to crack it. Millwall. I think that they've been knocking on that door for a few seasons now. I think Gary Rowett and Millwall are a really good match. For me personally, I think Millwall I think their home form is going to be vital. Their home form always is vital, Millwall. I think that the Den, they really do make it a bit of a fortress usually. I think with the way they fell out last season, I think that's going to motivate them to come back. And I think Millwall, I think they'll pull it together. And I don't think they'll go up from the playoffs, but I think they'll get in there at 6th. I think Gary Rowett's a really good manager. Millwall's a club that's suited to him. I'm going to go 6th for Millwall. I'm going to put my neck on the line and say Millwall will get in there. Not really too much of a shock from how much they've been knocking on the door, but yeah, I'm going to go Millwall to get in there.
Finally do it, yeah. everyone's going to think I'm really biased to this, but I've gone for us. I've gone for us because the feel-good factor around Birmingham City at the moment, and obviously people that don't see it from outside won't see it, but everything down to the club shop, the training ground, the stadium, the owners, the communication, the site, everything is just different. And it's only been a couple of months, and I can just see it getting better as the season progresses. We've made 9 signings, and usually it's like 5 loanees that we don't build on a squad. We've made 9 signings, and only one of them have been over the age of 30. So you can see we're building a team for the future. I say that, and we're 3-1 down to Peterborough at the moment in a friendly. So obviously we need it. We still need some signings in. Obviously there's 4 weeks left, but the beauty of it is we've still got room to bring in more players. We've got more permanents to bring in, and loans as well, which we've got some money to do, which we haven't had for a while. And of course the stadium, which has been broke for 3 years now, 4 years, I think. It's finally getting done by September. And when we get that St Andrews rocking, I think it's going to be, when it's bouncing, it's going to give us an extra 5 to 10 points a season. This season, just from the fans alone, just because of the atmosphere. And when St Andrews is bouncing, it's fantastic. But I think we've flirted around relegation for so long. I think the shackles are going to be off. I think we're going to have kind of like a Sunderland season where no one expects us to do anything, and then we'll just sneak out of nowhere and get into 5th. But I'm not just saying it just from our side. I think we've done the best transfer business in the Championship. Probably Middlesbrough's probably beat us to it a little bit, but exactly what we've needed, we've brought in. We needed probably a striker and a centre back, and I think we'll have a great season. So yeah, I can see us sneaking into 5th place next season, mate.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Again, I said with Birmingham, I think it's going to be more of a gradual progress, but I definitely see where you're coming from, though. You can have a season when you do shoot up the table, and it definitely is capable of happening. So 5th place for me, Ipswich Town. Big shout. They've just come up from League One. My reason for this is there's a massive feel-good factor around the club right now. The way they got relegated in 2019, I think, and it took them a few years to get out of League One. It wasn't easy. They spent about 3 years not even getting in the playoffs. So it certainly wasn't easy. I'm a massive fan of McKenna. A lot of people have been saying, oh, he's inexperienced in the Championship. And I agree with that. He is. But I just think he's a real good feel-good factor there. I just think Ipswich are going to be brilliant this season. I've got the Portman Road's going to be rocking. I think they're going to surprise a lot of teams with their football. A lot like Sunderland last season. I think Ipswich are going to have a fantastic season and surprise everyone. I'm not going to say they're going to get promoted to the Premier League, but I think the playoffs for me, they're going to surprise a lot of people. But I think it'll be a bridge too far. And yeah, I'm tipping Ipswich to have a great season. Big fan of McKenna and a big fan of their team. And I think Portman Road is going to be an absolute fortress this year. So Ipswich for me are going to be the surprise and make the playoffs.
Good shout, sir. Good shout. 4th, I've gone with the Swans. I've got Swansea. Like you said, 1 week they could be Barcelona, the other week they could be, I would say Aston Villa, but they're quite good nowadays, aren't they? So they could. 1 week they could turn it on and beat any team they want, and then the next they could be dreadful. But I think with Michael Duff, I think they'll find a bit more form this season. Their football, on its day is fantastic to watch. And obviously they've brought in a few players. They haven't lost a couple, obviously, Obafemi they've lost. And they've brought in a few, but they just spawn players that are just brilliant. They look like they've got like a Barcelona academy with the tiki-taka style football and, the progressive nature. And I think everyone likes watching Swansea play, but I do see them, last season they finished 10th. They should have been a bit higher because of some of the results they had. But I can really see them comfortably getting there. They're probably my nailed-on favourites to get in the playoffs. Obviously, Blues, I'm a bit optimistic. Sunderland, obviously, again. But Swansea, for me, is my dead cert to get into the top 6. I'll say that and they'll finish bottom. But yeah, Swansea 4th, mate.
Well, we're at an agreement, Jordan. For the 3rd time in the video, we're at an agreement. I didn't expect you to go for this, to be fair. A lot of people I've been speaking to are tipping Swansea to have a poor season. Now, the main reason I've got Swansea up here is because of Michael Duff. I'm a huge Michael Duff fan. In League Two, in the 2020-21 season when he got Cheltenham promoted, I was a massive fan of his. And also as well, Barnsley, the job he did at Barnsley last season. I know that Barnsley had just gone down. A lot of people were maybe expecting them to be up there, but the way that he did it, beat Bolton in the playoff semi-finals as well, a good Bolton team. I just think he's a very, very good manager. I think Swansea's a club where I can see him thrive. In Swansea, like managers who play really good football. They like managers who play an expansive style. I just think he's the perfect fit for Swansea. I might be wrong and say they might get relegated. I might make this is a bit of a gamble, but I just see Swansea having a good season. For me, these are one of the playoff finalists, but my third place are the ones I'm having to go up. So I think Swansea are going to have a brilliant season, and I think that they won't quite get there. I mean, they already lost in the playoffs a few years ago, so they don't want more heartbreak, obviously. But I do think they're going to have a brilliant season, Swansea. And for some reason, I think Duff's perfectly suited to them. And yeah, I'm going to go for them fourth place as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Third, I'm not really confident in this one. I've gone Southampton because, again, like I say, I was going through the spaces and probably should have done it in order, but I had nowhere else to put them. I actually completely forgot about them being in the Championship, to be honest. But I think even though I have got them third, they could finish there, but I wouldn't be surprised if they finished anywhere between third and 21st, to be honest with you, because, like you say, it's Russell Martin's in charge, but it could be like a transitional period where they will not finding the style of play. They're going to lose a few players, obviously, as well. But I don't think they had a really good squad anyway, apart from like James Ward-Prowse and people like that. Whether they keep hold of him, I think they've still got him, haven't they, by the sounds of it? They've still got James Ward-Prowse, yeah. So whether they keep hold of him, Che Adams, and players like that, then they could obviously finish in sort of the playoff zones and maybe top two. But I think it's going to take them some time to get going. But I'm not confident at all. I've gone Southampton third.
Yeah, I've gone Coventry City, and I've gone for Coventry to win the playoffs. A little bit like Luton as well, the way they responded to losing the playoffs the season before. And for me, I'm a massive fan of Mark Robins. For me, he is basically Eddie Howe at Bournemouth. Like, I think that no matter how many, if they suffer a setback, Coventry, they've always improved under Mark Robins on the season before as well. I just think they're so well run. Yes, the loss of Gyökeres is vital. I agree. And that this prediction could come back to bite me and they might be in a relegation battle. But I just think with Mark Robins being there, the way the club is, I just think they were so well run. I think they've got such a good thing about them, Coventry. I just think they're going to bounce back and be right up there. The reason I'm not going to have them in my top two is because I do think the two teams are just too strong. But I'm going to go Coventry, and I think they'll win the playoffs this time. I think it'll be a bit of a redemption story, and I think they'll win the playoffs. I think they're knocking on the door. They've got a really good stadium, a great manager. I think Coventry, for me, are too well run to not repeat what we did last season. So I'm going to go Coventry in third.
Good shout, mate. Good shout. So second, I've gone Leicester. A lot of people have gone top for Leicester, but I think second for me, just because of the new manager. He's not tried and tested yet, but the quality they've got enough quality in there to win the league comfortably, because you've still got the likes of Vardy. I know he's pushing 35, mid 30s. You got Daka, Iheanacho. They've just signed Connor Cody, Winks. The money that they've got as well, to buy players compared to the likes of QPR, Plymouth, Ipswich. I can't see them not going up, and if they don't, it's a disaster. Obviously, the way they went down with that squad, I think that's probably the best squad, even from what I can remember, that's gone down in recent history. It's only 3 years ago they was winning the FA Cup. 5, 6 years ago they was winning the Premier League with the same kind of players that they've got in there. But yeah, if you can keep the likes of Vardy fit, Iheanacho in the team, Daka. I know they've just lost like Harvey Barnes, Tielemans and stuff, but look at that squad. It looks too good already for the Championship, and they've added to it as well with experienced heads like Connor Cody, which I'm a little bit surprised he's gone, considering he's not in the England picture, but he's been in there. He's 29, 30. He was on loan at Everton, and he actually did all right until Dyche come in. He didn't play him very much. But Harry Winks, obviously, he's not had he had a lot of talk around him, but I don't think he's hit the ground running with Tottenham. So a Championship move could be what exactly he needs as well. But yeah, if you look at that team there, Sam, I can't see them, if they don't finish in the top two, even if they don't finish top. Obviously, I haven't gone for them top, but if they don't finish top, I think it's a failed season for them. But yeah, I can't see them not going back up, mate.
Yeah, completely agree. I'll get to Leicester as well when I predict them. But in my second place, I've gone for Leeds United. Again, John, after what you've said earlier on the video, it's kind of made me second think this prediction, actually. So,
yeah.
I'm not the biggest fan of Daniel Farke. I think they did a brilliant job at Norwich getting them promoted. I know they got relegated when they came back up. I don't think that was always Farke's fault. I think Farke had quite a limited budget at Norwich. He brought in Pookie, who was a master stroke, and he brought in some really good players. I just think with Leeds, it might not be Farke, but I just think that the last time they got relegated all them years ago, I think they might learn their lessons. That's the reason I've gone for them to bounce straight back. I just think Leeds, that, you know, they're a one-club city. I feel like their fans are going to stick right behind them. They've had a couple of tough seasons in the Premier League. The one season they did well, the fans weren't allowed in to watch it. So I feel really sorry for them, to be fair. The one season under Bielsa where they finished ninth, played some of the best football in the country, probably the most entertaining team to watch all around Europe, arguably. They were just brilliant every week. You never knew they were going to get beat 5-0 or win 5-0. But I just think with Leeds, there's just something there that I think that a lot of their players are championship quality. I think Bielsa massively overachieved with a lot of their players. I just think Leeds are just going to get it right. I think that they'll just go on a great run second half of the season and I think Ellen Road's going to be vital as well. I just think Leeds are going to do enough. I think they'll learn their lessons from last time they got relegated. And obviously they're not going down in anywhere near as worse circumstances now like they did in 2004. So I just think Leeds will do enough. I think that they're just going to have enough in the tank, and I think they're going to make maybe 1 or 2 January signings. But I could be wrong, and they could finish mid-table. I wouldn't be surprised with either, if I'm being honest. But I'm going to go Leeds because I live in Leeds as well. I'm a bit more optimistic. I want to see them do well. I'm going to say Leeds go up.
Yeah, brilliant. You've got to walk around Leeds with your head held high, haven't you, mate? So yeah, that's leads us on to the champions, and I've gone for the Borough. Again, similar to what you just said to me about Leeds, if you've kind of made me second think when you said about Michael Carrick, because I think, you know, probably all of their success was down to Michael Carrick coming in when he did. They couldn't not lose. If he was in for the full season, I think they could potentially have been in top 2. Probably would have been in the top 2. But yeah, I think with the signings they've made, like I say, between us and Middlesbrough, I think Middlesbrough probably had the best window. They've signed, you know, 8-9 players. They're just looking to build on it as well. And obviously, I just think that we're keeping lots of Atpom banging in, 27, 28 goals last season. And they've got a great squad, great manager, but it's all dependent, like you say, on the main man, Michael Carrick, because I think he's going to be a top manager. I think the way he's got them playing, you know, the style of football, their attacking flair. I watched them down St Andrews when they beat us 3-1, and I was just like, they look like a ready-made Premier League team. And, you know, with him and Vincent Kompany at the helm last year, there was some really good managers in, but there's quite a few in there this season as well. But yeah, I can see Middlesbrough actually winning the league, if not coming in the playoffs. But yeah, that's I didn't want to be like everybody else and say Leicester, so I've just gone with Middlesbrough.
Yeah, well, I have gone with everyone else and said Leicester will be champions. I don't want to be too predictable, but it reminds me a lot of when Newcastle came down in 2016 and 2009, in a sense that there's just too many good players. I know they sold a lot of them good players in the summer, but I think you made a good point, Jordan. The fact that when we first started doing these podcast shows, Leicester were in the top 3 in the Premier League, I believe, in autumn of winter of 2021. How they've fallen this far, I mean, it's baffling. I mean, obviously last season I was obviously out in Madrid, and every single week I've been like, no, they'll be all right. And then it got really close. Like, you know what? They actually might go down here. Like, it's like, I don't know what happened. I think that sacking Brendan Rodgers and bringing in Dean Smith was a bit baffling. I know they were relying on a manager bounce, and don't get me wrong, things weren't going well under Rodgers, and I get why they might have pulled the trigger, because obviously things were looking so bleak. But it's just crazy the fact Leicester City got relegated after finishing 8th the year before, winning the FA Cup the season before that, and finishing 5th 2 years in a row. It's got to be the biggest shock story ever. And as much as I do think Leicester will win it, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't. It's kind of a bit of one that if some Leicester players just like literally aren't motivated and think, I don't want to play in this division, like, you know, Leicester know if they're going to be traveling to Plymouth away, that's a long, long way to go from the East Midlands all the way up to Plymouth. And some Leicester players, like, I'm not saying Jamie Vardy, I do think he loves the club and stuff, but certain Leicester players might not want to go places like that. They might just be demotivated. The crowd are going to be on them. Leicester will be a bit like a cup final for some teams. The first game of the season, they've got Coventry at the King Power. This is going to be a real telling game, I think, about how Leicester's mentality is going to be. But I'm just going to go safe and say they will win it, because I think that I don't know much about the manager. He was Pep's second in command last year. That doesn't always mean great things. We saw how long it took Mikel Arteta to become a good manager at Arsenal. So, but I just think with Leicester, if Vardy can get motivated again, then they're going to get about 20 goals in the Championship probably from him. I think they've got enough quality. We knew the likes of Maddison, Barnes and Tielemans were going to leave, so that's not a surprise anyway. I think Harry Winks is a very smart signing. Connor Cody's a brilliant signing as well. He captained Wolves to promotion back in 2018, one of the best Championship teams ever. Well, that Wolves team was as well. So, yeah, I'm going to say Leicester will win it simply because I just think they've got the quality. I think they've got too much quality. Even if the manager isn't great, I don't think we'll know that till he's in the Premier League. So I just think no matter what with this Leicester team, he's got to do well, surely. Unless they have a mass exodus of players between now and the window shuts, I think they've got a good enough squad to go up. So, yeah, I'm going to go Leicester. I'm going to go Leicester and Leeds automatic. I'm going to go Coventry to come up via the playoffs and Huddersfield, Plymouth and Rotherham to go down, unfortunately. So, yeah, Jordan, that concludes our predictions, I guess. And before we go, any thoughts on maybe Golden Boot winner?
Yeah, so I've got a few. Akpom from Middlesbrough. There's 3 in Leicester that could do it, but it depends if they stay. Obviously, I don't want to make a prediction they get signed next week, but I'll obviously say, so obviously Iheanacho, Vardy and Daka, any of them 3 could potentially nick it. It depends if Vardy stays fit, because, last season, he relies a lot on pace, doesn't he, Vardy? So, he's been injured quite a bit over last season. That probably didn't help them in terms of staying up, because I think in full fit Jamie Vardy, you're staying up quite comfortably. You've got Che Adams from Southampton, Patrick Bamford. You've got about 6 or 7 people there that are potentially could be in the Premiership because they're that good at a lower end team. But if somebody said to me, you've got to put one of them people on, I'm going to go. Oh, it's really tough. I'm going to go with Akpom. Let's go Akpom. Yeah, just 28 goals last season. And I see Middlesbrough winning the league, so it makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, no, perfect. Yeah, really good, Jordan. Well, that for me, my Golden Boot winner, again, I've just played it quite safe and gone with Jamie Vardy. I could be completely wrong. It might not be Vardy. It could be someone quite random. But if I'm going to, usually the team who wins the league, not all the time in the Championship to be fair, but often the team who wins the league have to have a good goal scorer. So, yeah, I'm going to go for Vardy, but I could be wrong. Vardy's season could be a bit, could be another one like last season where he's not really involved too much. But, yeah, we'll wait and see. But that concludes our Championship prediction. We only agreed on 3 teams, Jordan, in each position, which is really interesting, to be honest. But, yeah, let's hope for another good Championship season. Can't wait for it to begin next week. And, yeah, thank you, Jordan, for joining me. And we'll revisit these at the end of the season and see how inevitably wrong some of them were.
Yeah, definitely. Sam, thank you for your time, mate. I'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah, speak to you soon. Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Bye. Bye.
See you.